Hi there, this is Steve Kimes, a Mennonite pastor of the homeless.
And my name is Ebony Adedayo. I am a pastor at a church in Minnesota and also a writer.
And this is BGWG, Black Gal, White Guy. And this is a conversation on theology and social justice. Today's episode will be about the acquittal of Jeronimo Yanez. But first, we're going to introduce a regular feature, recommendations. That's where we just note that there's all these materials, really excellent materials, some to read, to watch, to listen to, and we've ingested these things, and we want to make some recommendations to expand your mind and the life of how Jesus is working in the world today. So, Ebony, you want to go ahead and share your recommendation for the day?
Sure. So I just picked up from my church's library on Sunday this book by a woman I had been wanting to read maybe 5 years. It's called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, and it's from Dr. Joy DeGruy-Leary. And the reason why I picked it up is because I just finished reading The Body Keeps the Score, which was really amazing, very informational, but it was
I've been wanting to read that one. The Body Keeps the Score. I really want to read that one.
Really good. It's really dense. It's amazing, but it focuses on individual trauma. And this book by Dr. Joy DeGruy, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, focuses on trauma that happens in community when violence, racism, and other structural vices happen. And so I feel like it's a really good read after having a grounding about what trauma is and how it affects the body. Now being able to focus on specifically how it shows up in the African-American community is amazing.
Do you recommend reading Your Body Keeps the Score before you read the other one?
Not necessarily. I think for me it was really important because I also work in trauma and resilience stuff on a daily basis for my job with the city of Minneapolis, the job I actually get paid to do. So it was important for me to have that high level grounding first. But for folks who are not doing this work on a daily basis, I say you could go right into Dr. Joy DeGruy stuff.
Okay. All right. And go ahead and give the name one more time.
Sure. It's actually, here's the book.
There you go.
It's Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, Dr. Joy DeGruy. She wrote it back in 2005. She's an African-American woman. She's amazing. She's thebomb.com. And I think I'm into page. I started reading it yesterday. I'm on page 50. So it's dense, but it's also, I feel, because it's talking about my experience, I'm reading through it and I'm not getting stuck around terminology and things like that.
That's really good, especially because I took a look at that book and it looked really thick. It looked like a really thick book. So
it is.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good that it isn't too technical. All right. And the one I want to recommend today is also a book. It's called All Saints, and it's by Robert Ellsberg. And so a lot of us know about. There's lots of books about saints out there. Martyr's Mirror. And then there's Butler's Lives of the Saints. And this is along the lines of Butler's Lives of the Saints. You get these kind of devotional one-page life of the saints, except that he's not just sticking to Catholic saints. He's not just sticking to white saints. He's it's a very international, very and multi-ethnic and multi-religion. Not so. Some of the saints that he mentions aren't even Christian, and
really interesting.
It's really excellent. I mean, basically, there's one of my favorite guys, and actually, he's in this book. He's the guy who started the Jesuit order, Ignatius Loyola. So when he used to be a soldier, he was a soldier, and then he was laid up. He was basically stuck for almost a year in a bed, trying to recover from an injury that he had. And he only had two books. He had the Lives of the Saints and the Bible. And that's all so all he did was read the Gospels and read the Lives of the Saint. And after that, after a year of basically reading that, he said, my life has to be different. My life has to look radically different because I want to be more like the saints and less like the idiot that I used to be who got laid up in this bed. This book, All Saints, is actually set up so that way you can read about one saint a day for a year. So it's set up like a devotional. You read one. is one saint a day, and every single one of these people are so inspiring, and so many of them are involved in social justice and different in different aspects, different parts of the world. And anyway, I love this book. Highly recommend it.
Awesome.
Okay, so now let's go ahead and get to our main subject for the day. It was just a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
That Officer Jeronimo Yanez got acquitted. So it was right around a year ago that the officer. Exactly a year ago.
It would have been a year on the 6th.
A year on the 6th, right? And Officer Jeronimo Yanez pulled over Philando Castile, and Philando Castile told him straight up that he had a weapon on his person, and he also had a gun permit. And while he was trying to reach out the gun permit, Officer Yanez shot and killed him. At the same time, Philando's girlfriend was taping all of this, and that tape ended up on the internet. And I would be surprised if the people listening to this podcast, if not most of us, if not all of us, saw that tape. It was really stunning. It was stunning to watch that on top of the many other tapes that we've seen about police shootings of African Americans over the last couple of years. And so now it turns out, I did not know this before we started talking today, but Ebony, at that event, the shooting happened just a mile away, about a mile away from where she lives in her city. So before we get into the actual acquittal, how do you feel about that happening? What makes you? I mean, it's one thing to see videos happening in New York or in Florida or something like that, but this is in your own town. How did that make you feel?
You know, even as you are saying it again, like I feel like I'm reliving it again.
I'm sorry.
It was maybe a mile and a half away, and we had just moved into this particular neighborhood from somewhere further north from Roseville. We live in St. Paul now. The event happened in Falcon Heights. Falcon Heights is really, really tiny, really, really tiny. I was just actually out. I was out getting my daughter's birthday is on July 7th. And so I was getting her a birthday present. I was just literally coming home from Snelling and County Road B, and the event happening at Snelling and Larpenteur thereabout. Actually, Larpenteur and Fry. Fry is a block away from Snelling. And I live on the other side of Larpenteur, on Larpenteur in Dale. And so it just felt like just too close to home, too close to family, too close to comfort. And I usually make a rule to not watch those videos because I don't like to see my people getting shot. Like, that's just ridiculous. But on this particular occasion, I did because it was so close. Like, I felt I felt like I needed to bear witness to what was happening in my community in real time. Yeah. And it shook me. Like, I was a mess for the rest of the summer. I'm still a mess just because of watching your people getting their lives taken away like that. It does something to your body. And the book that I recommended by Dr. Joy D. Gruey, talking about the post-traumatic slave syndrome, even though slavery ended officially after the Emancipation Proclamation and Juneteenth later after that, our bodies continue to respond as if we are witnessing the acts of slavery in the same exact way. And so my body responded in the same way that my ancestors' body responded after they saw their men and their women getting lynched, in the same way that their ancestors responded as they were seeing their people being beaten. And so the things that I carry, they're continuous, even though this is a particular event that's happening in 2017, not 1619, not 1821. I feel like I'm experiencing it in real time right now. And so I'm tense, I'm angry, I'm irritable, I'm gonna lash out at people because this isn't right.
So you're angry, it was inhumane.
Yeah, it's how do you, I don't understand how someone does that to another person without their own humanity being at stake. Even the fact that the reason why he pulled Castile over in the first place is just, a whole lot of questions surrounding that.
And you said, you were telling me just beforehand that in that same area of town that you've been pulled over right there. Maybe it was about 10 years ago, you said, but that same thing happened to you.
Twice, about 10 years ago. I used to actually get pulled over maybe once or twice a year up until the time that I had kids. And I noticed that I stopped getting pulled over once I had children in the back seat. However, last year I was kind of going around an accident. This is before the shooting of Philando Castile happened. So this was April and Castile happened in July, different part of town. And a police car started to follow me, and I had both of my kids in the back seats to my kids' daycare. And he did some circles around the block. I got both of my kids out the car. We went into the daycare, and he seemed to stop following me. I don't know what would have happened if they weren't in the car. And I also know that they still don't care about who's in the car because Philando Castile's girlfriend, her daughter was in the car when they shot. Yeah. They shot. Yeah. So I feel like even then, the inhumanity, the lack of just the cutting off from yourself, that you would do that in front of anyone, but let alone a child who is scarred for the rest of her life. I don't think any amount of therapy, save the miraculous intervention of God in some really intensive therapy, and just like, what do you do? A child witnesses with her front eyes, and then that same child turns around to comfort her mother. Like, it's just mind-boggling to me, the stuff that we have to deal with in this country by virtue of our skin, by virtue of the legacy of slavery. And so we can't say that slavery ended in the past. It's very much present and alive today. It may have taken different forms, but the fact that I, as a Black woman, don't feel safe, the fact that anytime my husband is out late and he's not where he's supposed to be when I think he's supposed to be, the fact that a family can't go to the grocery store without living in terror, that's not freedom, that's slavery. It's slavery.
How does that change how you live on a daily basis, knowing that this is a possibility?
I still try to live my life to the fullest. I don't want to give in to the lie that Satan has pronounced, that people have internalized about people of African descent. Yeah. If I were to give into that lie, I lose.
Right.
I lose. I lose if I shelter my children. I lose if I decide that I'm not going to be bold and tenacious. I lose if I say I'm not going to protest and do justice because I'm afraid. Right. Last week was my son's 4th birthday. And on the same day of his birthday was the same day as Tamir Rice's birthday. And I found that out after I got home from church. And my husband were just reflecting on it.
And just for if any of our listeners don't know who Tamir Rice is, he was also shot by an officer.
12 years old.
12 years old, because he was playing with a toy gun. And the officer saw him and shot him.
Right. So I was like, I felt this sense of fear. I felt this sense of like, I want my children to grow up and be healthy and well. And at the same time, I'm like, I'm not going to shelter them. I'm not going to make them live their lives different. Like, they have to be afraid. I want them to be conscious. I want them to be aware. I want them to be smart, but I don't want them to be afraid. I want them to live within their full humanity as God's creations, their full humanity as African children. Yeah. I don't want them to shrink back to make someone else feel safer. I want them to, and I know that comes with this risk, but I rather risk that than risk cutting off who my children are, their personalities, their abilities, their strengths, their dreams, their visions to fly, their visions to do so many amazing things. I want them to have that opportunity and not feel like they need to compromise it because they're afraid because of the color of their skin.
And the other thing is that to teach our children to be afraid to do certain things, we're also making the world poorer.
Absolutely.
Because it is our children and who they are, African children and who they are, going out and being who they are, and not having to shrink back because of some event or some incident. They need to be who they are, and that'll make the whole world richer.
Absolutely.
Just because they're out there and they're like, hey, this is it. This is who I am, and you're going to have to deal with me with who I am. And that's if we teach our children, oh well, you're going to be safer if you act like this. You're going to be safer if you just stay quiet. You're going to be safer if. But the thing is that, maybe our children will be safer. Maybe they won't.
That's it.
We don't know if they're going to be safer or not. But we need to train our children to be bold and stand up for love and stand up for who they are. So that way the world is just going to have to deal with it.
That's right. Amen to that.
So let me ask you then. Okay, so this last week, the officer who shot him, Officer Yanez, was acquitted. So I just want to know how do you feel about justice in your community then? If you have someone from your community being shot and then the officer is not acquitted.
It feels laughable. It feels, I know, I participated in some of the initial protests and disengaged for my own health after that because I realized how angry and irritable I was. So come August, September, I stopped going to many of the protests and kind of saw how other people were engaging, going to Falcon Heights City Hall, going to all these different meetings and participating, writing letters, raising their voice. I did a lot of writing and a lot of blogging, and that felt really comfortable. I also had some back problems at that time, and I felt like this event intensified what I was already experiencing because of the back problems that I had.
Right. Well, it could be the other way around too. The stress adds to the back problems,
Right. But I saw people in my community engage, and I actually had an opportunity to be a part of a community circle dialogue in Falcon Heights over the last couple of months, where I was able to facilitate conversation around what the city's response should be to the police shooting and to the police force. So Falcon Heights is so small that they outsource their police department, which is in St. Anthony. So St. Anthony cops have a particular reputation for being racist and pulling people over. So one of the results of that circle was that Falcon Heights is looking at cutting off their relationship with St. Anthony. And at the same time, we know that police forces, whether it's St. Anthony, it's Minneapolis, and St. Paul, wherever they are, that inherent to the culture of policing is this bias, and this bias against African-American men, African-American women, and African-American children. And so they can be the most benevolent police force in the world, but the fact that that's part and parcel to the culture of policing is problematic. The police force was founded in Europe to to protect the wealth of white wealthy elites before even migrating here to America. Once the structure of policing finally did find its way here, it was about slave catching and keeping poor whites away from the resources of wealthy whites. And so we realize that is the structure, that is the history, that is the purpose. How can policing be just? Like, you would have to completely reorient the system in order for it to work, for it to not profit off of the bodies of Black and brown people, whether they are killing them, they are arresting them and taking them to jail, or making money off of the fines and the tickets that they give them. Because you know that in Ferguson, after the shooting of Mike Brown in 2014, there was a report that was about the Ferguson Police Department and the amount of fines that the police were able to rack up within this poor African American predominantly community to fund their policing activities. And so how can justice happen in this type of situation when the institution is inherently unjust? What I did see, though, is that this was the first time that a case, I want to say locally for sure, but I believe also nationally, where the officer was actually brought to trial. Yeah. Like, that's the first time that happened, which says a lot about the work and the movement of Black Lives Matter and from some local activists and the stink that we've been raising around what's going on in our communities. But it also shows we have a long way to go. That in 2017, this was the first time that a police officer has ever been tried.
Yeah. You know, the thing is that for me, the problem is not just with this police officer, that police officer, it's with the entire system.
Yeah.
And I know that some police districts have actually been trying to answer that. So for instance, Las Vegas, they were actually fined by the Department of Justice because of their horrendous racial practices. They pulled in some training, and they have now African American officers who come and give racism training to officers, and especially focusing on implicit bias. And so Las Vegas actually did this training. They really focused on trying to make this, and I understand that now they're doing really well as far as relating to people of color and all of that. St. Petersburg, Florida, the police chief there said, well, our numbers for shootings for people of color are horrible. It's just horrible. And so we want to change it. So he also got in training. He pulled in people, paid people, had everyone on his force trained, and changed the entire county. Changed over the entire county so that way now it doesn't mean that they don't have shootings, because they still have shootings, but the numbers are equitable. They're not like one community has way more than all the others. And I'm not saying that's
one shooting one too many. I don't understand why. And I know that African American men get disproportionately shot by police. Yes. And I also know that white men and white women do too. And I've heard of cases where people with different abilities also getting shot by police. And I feel like there has to be and that's why I say the whole system is corrupt. There is a racial dynamic when it comes to policing. And just the fact that inherently it's about controlling behavior.
Right.
One is one too many. I don't want my African American brothers and sisters getting shot, because it reminds me too much of what happened to us a long time ago. But I don't want anybody getting shot.
I don't want anybody getting shot.
So how do we? Right. So racist bias, implicit bias training is important. Understanding the trauma that police officers go through is important. But how do we reorient this structure so that it's not about controlling behavior? It's not about protecting wealth and property, but it's about actually keeping people safe.
Well, and if we
want to keep people safe, I don't think that we would have an institution like this that makes people inherently unsafe.
And this is where my cynicism comes in, okay? Because I've worked with the homeless for a very long time, as you know, and I'll tell you, you want to talk about bias. There's no implicit bias in how police treat the homeless. It's open.
Yeah.
You know, and not only is it open, nobody in the community really has a problem with it. You know, there's not, we have a number of homeless people shot every year, and yet nobody has any protests about that. That doesn't seem to be a big deal. Nobody has a problem with that. And so for me, you know, it's like, okay, yes, the police are there to protect wealthy people. That's what they do. That's what they're for. And if you actually go up to a police officer and say, actually, I had a conversation with a police officer one time, and he told us, well, we are here to protect, and he's talking to me, we're here to protect your kinds of people, not their kinds of people looking at homeless people or poor people. He just said it straight out. He was very, very clear. And I didn't even know what to say to that. That just offended me so much. And I said, you know what? We're here to protect everybody.
Absolutely.
The church is here. The church is here to welcome and protect everyone. And we put in front of our church, we renamed the whole facility Sanctuary. And a police officer comes up to me and says, why'd you put that sign over there? I said, to let people know that this is a safe place no matter who they are. And I said, it's even safe for you. The only reason I'm going to ask you to leave is if you start threatening anybody here. But if you start threatening anybody here, then I'm going to tell you you're going to need to go. And I've gone up to police officers and I said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to get off the church property because you're threatening people here and there's no reason for it.
Right. So let me ask you a question then, since we've kind of talked about your church's response. What do you, in this moment, as two pastors who do theology and wrestle with social justice on a daily basis, I know what the church is doing, but what do you feel is the role and the responsibility of the church to respond prophetically in these moments?
Well, you know, the funny thing is that at least in my experience, churches, especially denominations, have got a lot of power to talk to cities, to talk to police departments and say, we want to tell you that we don't want to see these kinds of things happening in our town anymore. I mean, it's one thing as a single pastor going and being involved in protests. That doesn't mean very much. But when you have an entire denomination that is going and saying, no, we can't have this anymore. If you have an ecumenical organization that is pooling together, that's a lot of votes. Mm-hmm. You know, and anyway, and so and going to the mayor, going to the police chief, and saying, this kind of activity we are no longer going to accept. This is not what this community is about. I believe that that in a lot of towns, not all of them, but in a lot of cities, governments and police districts are going to listen to that. They're going to take that really seriously and say, well, we're going to have to address this in one way or another. And I know how politics works, and more often than they're going to whitewash it before they try to actually change it.
Right.
But that just means that we have to be persistent and say, you know, that's really nice, but it's not really making the change that we're looking for. We need to demand change of the people who are doing it. The thing is that I believe that as a church, we are ministers of mercy. We are there to represent the powers of mercy in our community.
Amen.
And that means that we need to take a hard line. I don't think that tough love is punishing a kid. I think tough love is demanding of our leaders, no, you are going to have grace on people. You are not going to just punish them because they look like they need to be punished. You know, we will not accept that anymore. And if you keep doing that, we will find ways to pull you out of office.
That's right.
I think we can do it. I think we can.
That's right. We have the numbers. I mean, just the sheer numbers of people who profess faith. I'm not talking about people who really are persons of faith, but people who confess with their mouths and say that they believe in their hearts that Jesus is Lord. The sheer numbers. And not just only of the Christian faith, but I think of the Muslim faith and the Jewish faith, right, and so many other faiths who core within their doctrine and within their theology are these attributes around justice and mercy and love and hospitality. And I think about if all these people of faith who say that they love God and love justice to rally together and really take a stand and stand against the principalities and powers in high places in the way that you described, that we really would they would either have to silence us or they would have to pay attention to us.
Oh, and if they silenced us, they just get in more trouble that way. Really?
Right. Because we're so large.
Yeah, that's right. And it doesn't look good to say, police shot this pastor. It just doesn't look good no matter how you do it.
It doesn't. But I feel like because of the Spirit working within us, that really is the opportunity. That's the call. That's the responsibility. And I don't know what it will take for individual Christians, but also for our collective bodies to really rally together. I hope it doesn't take another Philando Castile. No. I hope it doesn't take another Tamir Rice or Mike Brown or Sandra Bland. Because that's one too many. And I don't want to keep making examples off of the blood of other people. No, I just wish that the church would see with their eyes and discern with their hearts what is happening among us and would rise up.
We're going to need to, we'll leave it at that. I want to keep this one going. This is great stuff, but I think we're going to let it go. Just want to say thank you all for listening to our podcast, our first podcast, and hope our next topic will be in 2 weeks. If you'd like to contact us, then you can email us at bgwg@mennonerds.com. That's bgwg@mennonerds.com. Black gal, white guy @mennonerds.com. But don't write it all out, just bgwg. And if the email that you send us is especially cool, then we'll read it and we'll comment on it in our next episode. We want to thank Ryan Robinson for his amazing editing skills. But until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you and give you peace.
Amen.
Hey everyone, this is Paul Walker. If you like what you just heard, be sure to check out more of what we have to offer at MennoNerds.com. It's the hub for all things MennoNerds. From there, you can learn more about these podcasts, syndicated blogs from people all over the world, books authored by some of our members, and a host of other exciting free resources for you and your church. Now, there's one last thing. What we do costs a bit of money, and we're always doing it on a volunteer basis. We have people that are committed to making this happen, but we could use more people. If you like what we do, please consider donating monthly. We have two options. You can either do a monthly donation through Patreon, or you can give a one-time donation at any time through PayPal. We love the work we do, but we do need your help to keep it going and to expand into new territory. If you would like to donate, check out MennoNerds.com/donate. Thanks for listening, and as always, have a great day.